Iran couldn't stop the bombs falling on its military. It couldn't shoot down the aircraft dismantling its defenses. It couldn't win the war it started. So it did what desperate regimes do. It stopped fighting soldiers and started attacking the world's energy supply. What happened next triggered a global gas crisis, sent European energy prices into free fall, and forced the United States to unleash weapons it had been holding back. This is the moment Operation Epic Fury stopped being a contained military campaign and became something far more dangerous. On March 18th, Iran launched 5 ballistic missiles at Qatar, the second largest LNG exporter on the planet and one of Asia's most critical energy suppliers. Qatar's air defenses intercepted 4 of them. The 5th got through. It struck Ras Laffan Industrial City, and the world felt it immediately. This wasn't Iran's first move against Ras Laffan. Back on March 3rd, a Shaheen drone hit the facility as what analysts now describe as a deliberate warning shot, a signal of what was coming. That attack caused limited physical damage, but Qatar halted production anyway. The facility was too important to risk. Ras Laffan alone accounts for roughly 1/5 of the entire planet's LNG output. Shutting it down even partially sends shockwaves across global energy markets. The March 18th strike was something else entirely. Qatar Energy confirmed the damage was extensive. Restoration to full capacity, experts say, could take years. One analyst put it plainly: even after the conflict ends, the supply impact could stretch on for months or years while repairs are carried out. The financial markets didn't wait for the repair estimates. The morning after the strike, European natural gas futures surged 28% overnight, briefly hitting €70 per unit, equivalent to just over $81. At market open, the initial spike had touched 35%. A single missile, a single facility, a 35% jump in European gas prices before breakfast. That's not collateral damage, that's a strategy. Iran knows it cannot match the United States in direct military confrontation. Operation Epic Fury has made that abundantly clear. What Iran can do is make the world pay a price for America's campaign, through energy markets, through supply disruption, through the kind of economic pain that turns public opinion and pressures governments into demanding a ceasefire.
And Ras Laffan wasn't the end of it. Over the following 2 days, Iranian drones carried out a sustained assault on Kuwait's largest oil refinery, Mina al-Ahmadi. The attack triggered fires across multiple processing units simultaneously. Mina al-Ahmadi handles approximately 730,000 barrels of crude oil every day, converting raw petroleum into gasoline, diesel, and other usable products. With oil prices hovering at or above $100 per barrel, that's roughly $73 million worth of crude being processed at that facility every single day. Iran failed to take the entire refinery offline, and critically, it failed to kill anyone. No casualties were reported, which matters both for Kuwait's civilian population and for keeping the technical expertise needed to maintain operations intact. But several refining units were forced to shut down, and the message was unmistakable. Iran was no longer restricting itself to military targets. It was going after the economic infrastructure that keeps Gulf nations functioning. None of this happened in isolation. To understand why Iran made these moves, you have to go back to March 17th. That's when Iranian drones struck the Shah gas field, located roughly 111 miles southwest of Abu Dhabi. That facility supplies approximately 20% of the UAE's total annual gas consumption and around 5% of the world's granulated sulfur output. Suspending operations there wasn't a minor disruption, it was a deliberate escalation. Israel responded. Its strike targeted South Pars, the massive offshore gas field that Iran shares with Qatar, and the single largest source of domestic energy inside Iran itself. Qatar's foreign ministry immediately labeled Israel's strike dangerous and irresponsible, warning that targeting energy infrastructure posed a direct threat to global energy security. Within days, Iran's response to South Pars proved every word of that warning correct. What we're watching unfold is a tit-for-tat energy war, each side striking the other's economic lifelines, each strike justifying the next. And Iran, unable to defend its own military infrastructure, has found in this cycle exactly the kind of conflict it believes it can win, or at least survive.
Here's what makes Iran's strategy genuinely dangerous. Energy in the Gulf isn't just an economic issue, it's the foundation of everything. Energy wealth determines which regimes stay in power. It underpins the diplomatic relationships between Gulf nations. It's how these countries attract foreign workers and foreign investment. The South Pars gas field, for instance, has historically served as a quiet diplomatic bridge between Qatar and Iran, a shared resource that gave both countries reason to maintain communication even during tense periods. When those facilities become targets, that entire framework collapses. Iran is deliberately trying to trigger that collapse. The more chaos it can generate outside its own borders, the more pressure it places on Washington. Look at oil prices. Look at gas prices. Iran can point at those numbers and say, this is what America's war is costing you. It creates confusion in countries that never wanted to be part of this conflict. Iran can't beat Iraq on the battlefield, but it's betting it can beat America in the headlines. The United States didn't wait. Its response came on multiple fronts simultaneously, and each element was designed to strip away a specific piece of leverage Iran thought it held. General Dan Kane, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, confirmed at a March 19th press briefing that A-10 Thunderbolt II attack aircraft stationed around Iran are now actively hunting Iranian fast boats in the Strait of Hormuz. The strait is Iran's most powerful economic pressure point. Approximately 20% of global oil consumption passes through this narrow waterway every year, along with a massive share of LNG exports, Qatar's included. Under normal conditions, over 100 cargo vessels transit the strait daily. Since the conflict escalated, that number has dropped sharply, with crossings on the worst days creating the impression of nearly empty shipping lanes. Iran's weapon of choice in the strait is its fleet of fast attack boats, vessels capable of exceeding 30 knots, armed with drones, missiles, and heavy weapons, capable of approaching slow-moving oil tankers before those ships can react. One class of vessel, the Blade Runner, built in the UK but acquired by Iran through a series of transactions deliberately structured to obscure the buyer, has been particularly active in these waters. Retired Royal Navy Vice Admiral Duncan Potts explained the logic. Iran learned during the 1980s tanker war that a conventional navy is vulnerable against the U.S. fleet, so it went asymmetric, cheap, fast, inshore craft that could strike and disappear before American warships could respond. Most of the time, these boats are simply too fast for naval vessels to engage effectively. The A-10 changes that equation entirely. Originally designed in the 1970s as a Soviet tank killer, the A-10 Thunderbolt II has proven itself one of the most versatile attack platforms in the American arsenal. Its 30mm GAU-8 Avenger 7-barrel rotary cannon, built directly into the airframe, can shred a fast boat before its crew even registers the aircraft overhead. The A-10 is faster than any fast boat. It can loiter over the strait and engage multiple targets in a single pass. Iran's asymmetric naval strategy, refined over 4 decades, is now being dismantled from the air. But it doesn't stop there. Simultaneously, F-15s began deploying GBU-72 bunker-busting bombs against the hardened missile and fast boat launch sites dotting Iran's coastline along the Strait of Hormuz. The GBU-72 is a 5,000-pound weapon that first emerged publicly in 2021 when test results from Eglin Air Force Base were reported. It can be carried by F-15s, as we're seeing now, as well as B-1B Lancer bombers, which are currently operating out of RAF Fairford in the United Kingdom. Equipped with guidance kits combining GPS and inertial navigation, these bombs can be released from standoff range and still hit their targets with precision. The kinetic energy generated as the GBU-72 plummets toward a hardened structure is what drives it through reinforced concrete and packed soil. What happens after penetration is total destruction. These strikes serve two purposes. First, they degrade Iran's ability to threaten the strait. Second, and perhaps more significantly, they're targeting the very launch sites Iran has been using to fire ballistic missiles at Qatar and Kuwait. The message Washington is sending is unambiguous. You hit our partner's energy infrastructure once. We're making sure you can't do it again. As of March 19th, 44 Iranian mine-laying vessels had also been destroyed, further degrading Tehran's ability to use the strait as a choke point. And the U.S. is simultaneously ramping up strikes on command and control structures inside Iran, operated by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The more of those that go down, the harder it becomes for Tehran to coordinate future strikes like the ones it carried out against Ras Laffan. Admiral Brad Cooper, commanding U.S. Central Command, made America's position plain. Operations would continue until Iran's threat to free commerce through the Strait of Hormuz is completely dismantled. President Trump went further. On March 22nd, he warned publicly that the United States would begin targeting Iran's domestic power stations if freedom of navigation through the strait wasn't fully restored within 48 hours. That deadline falls on March 24th, today. Throughout this entire conflict, the United States has deliberately held back from one target, Harg Island. At just 7.7 square miles, Harg is a relatively small piece of land in the Persian Gulf, but it handles over 90% of Iran's oil exports. It is, in practical terms, the financial engine of the Iranian state. Without Harg, Iran cannot sell its oil. Without oil revenue, Iran cannot fund its military, its proxies, or its government. The U.S. has avoided striking Harg's oil infrastructure intentionally, keeping it as leverage, as a final card to play if Iran pushes too far. But after the strikes on Qatar and Kuwait, that restraint is under serious review. What's being discussed now is not just airstrikes. U.S. administration officials are actively examining the possibility of a ground seizure of the island, sending troops in to physically take control of the one asset propping up Iran's entire economy. If that happens, Iran doesn't just lose revenue, it loses the ability to finance continued resistance. Every drone it launches, every missile it fires, every fast boat it deploys, all of it runs on money that would no longer exist. Iran could keep fighting, but it would be fighting on borrowed time, watching its economy collapse in real time with no path back. And whether you believe that seizure will happen or not, consider this. The United States is currently sending over 2,000 Marines toward the region. That's not a coincidence. That's preparation.
Iran thought it had found America's pressure point. Global energy markets, spiking prices, economic pain felt far beyond the battlefield. What it may have miscalculated is that the United States holds a pressure point of its own, one that goes directly to the heart of the Iranian regime's survival. The A-10s are in the air, the bunker busters are falling, the Marines are moving. Iran's next move will tell us everything about whether its leadership understands what it's actually up against.